Welcome to Decode, a podcast that delves into the complex world of K-12 computer science education, highlighting the significance of storytelling in comprehending educational data.
Hi, Mike, and welcome. And to everyone else, welcome to another episode of the Decode podcast. I'm your host, Stanley Bucheski, CEO of PyTop. We're a computer science and robotics curriculum and hardware education provider. And we're going to be talking about access and equity in computer science. And specifically, we're here with Mike Lubelfeld, Superintendent of North Shore Schools, District 112. And what is Decode and why? Just a reminder, with the Decode podcast, we're seeking not only to understand why there is this massive disparity in computer science enrollment by gender and race, but to find some solutions to serve all students. I often compare this journey with my experience as a West Point cadet when I was forced to unlearn certain things I thought were true and to relearn other things to become a better leader. Decode is an effort to unlearn certain biases, seek some truth, and find some solutions so that we can provide good CS education to all kids. So, Mike, you're the superintendent of 9 pre-K through 8 schools in Illinois, which I'm very excited to hear more about. But you're also an author of 4 books, and I have to say, in a very uncanny way, the titles of your books just really landed for me. I mean, it really hit. You know, your first book was actually called it was The Unlearning, right?
Yes.
So I mean, it's kind of I actually wrote this description of Decode after you wrote your book, but before we actually spoke. So it was kind of uncanny that you had that title, and so I feel like we're on the same page, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about the books you're writing. But I'm just gonna list them real quick because I love the titles of them. You've got the Unlearning Leader, actually, is the name of it. Student Voice from Invisible to Invaluable, which I really want to dig into with you because I just feel like it's really, really important for students to have a voice right now. And then you've got the Unfinished Leader and the Unfinished Teacher, and then the Unfinished Leader. So it's quite a list of books. What inspired you to pen all of these pieces of literature for teachers and students?
Well, Stanley, it's really nice to be here with you. I share your vision and mission, and we didn't even know it. So it's serendipity that puts us together. So part of it is I've got really great friends and colleagues and leaders. So the books are co-authored. So all 4 have been co-authored with Dr. Nick Polyak, another Illinois superintendent, and 3 of the books have been co-authored with Dr. PJ Capozzi, former Illinois Superintendent of the Year. So part of it is our shared motivation to take all this stuff that's inside of us, all this leadership stuff. We've been blessed with incredible teachers, really generous and supportive school boards, leadership teams that have helped round us out as leaders and make us more impactful and better. And for the 3 of us to a person, writing is very cathartic and almost therapeutic. So the Unlearning Leader, I'll tell you briefly how the genesis of that, and then I think it shows how the others flowed. So Nick Polyak and I were at the White House for a convening of innovators. It was really exciting. We went to the U.S. Trademark and Patent Office. We were with then President Obama's Director of Innovation from the Department of Ed and a special advisor. And long story short, we came back to Illinois. We're in Northeast Illinois. We're in Lake County, just north of Chicago. We went to a Future Educator Summit, and right up our alley. One of the presenters on video was a man named Jack Aldrich, and Jack's a futurist, really interesting guy. I've checked out his readings. I've never met him. I haven't met him yet. And Jack was talking about 2 concepts, one very silly and one very serious. The silly concept is this, and I'm going to ask you, Stanley. What two?
No. I'm doing the interviewing here.
Oh, okay.
You can't ask me. I'm kidding you.
I know. So the question was, and you can answer or not. You're right. You're the host. What 2 colors are a yield sign, like the road sign out there? And so Jack said, if you think they're yellow and black, raise your hand. And Stanley, I raised my hand real high. Okay. Then he said, if you think they're red and white, raise your hands. And of course, I'm like, no, they're yellow and black. Here's the silly but profound. Yield signs were yellow and black in the United States until the 1970s. They've been red and white everywhere since then. I taught driver's ed in 1992. Who knows what vintage the book was I used to teach it. The point Jack made very subtly was that we learn stuff real easily. So I learned that it was yellow and black at some point in my life. It's difficult to unlearn, as you just spoke about in the intro about you're going to West Point. Now, let me briefly tell you about a series.
They had to beat it out of us. I mean,
here in elementary school, we're a lot more gentle, but I dig it. Jack talked about the story of Dr. Barry Marshall, who won a Nobel Prize for discovery of the bacteria that causes ulcers. Quick story is, when Dr. Marshall discovered it, he was laughed and booed off the stage of his peers. It was only when he did an experiment injecting himself with the bacteria that caused it that he was able to dispel the myth and help us unlearn that ulcers themselves are not caused by smoking or spicy food or stress. In fact, they're caused by bacteria. It took about 18 years to unlearn that. Nick and I said, poof, if it takes 18 years to unlearn something we know works and is right, we'll have a generation of students go through elementary and secondary and never learn that. That was the impetus and genesis of the unlearning leader. And then with PJ and Nick, we said student voice, man, these are schools for students. How do we incorporate their voice? So sorry to blather on, but that was a great question.
I really love the and by the way, I hate to admit it, but I was going to say yellow and black, and then as you were talking, then I was thinking about Europe. I think in Europe most of the signs they don't actually say yield, but they're just a triangle and they're red and white. And then I started. Yeah, so I think I'm on my way to unlearning the yield sign example. But yeah, I think I was also super excited to see that the title of your other book was Student Voice, because right now what is frustrating to me, or just shocking to me, is so I like to look at the scorecard for every state that code.org does, right? So and the scorecard, one of the things that it shows is that for the state of Illinois, there are 14,000 plus open computing jobs in the state, paying an average of $107,000 per year. I mean, if that's not incentive enough to just put everything into studying computer science, I mean, whether you're a teacher or a student, I mean, I don't know what is. And yet, here we have very low enrollment across gender and race. And right in front of us is this tool for really economic life transformation for so many people. So yes. How do we reconcile that? And I guess I'm asking it in the context of the title of your second book, which is Student Voice. What inspired you to write Student Voice?
So it's funny, and we were rejected by a couple publishers who thought, what would 3 superintendents know about student voice? And we're like, well, we think we have something to say. So, and then I reached out to Russ Quaglia, who is one of like the preeminent writers on this topic, and he wrote an endorsement for our book. So I felt validated. It was essentially the fact that the 3 of us are very different people, different leaders, and in different settings. I'm in a suburban Chicago setting. Nick is in a first ring suburb, so a little bit more urban high school setting, and PJ is out near Rockford, Illinois, but it's more rural and it's K-12. So we have these 3 very disparate settings, geographically, culturally, religiously, economically, right? At the same time, though, we're all helping lead our teams and vision with the board, and we each are engaging students in different ways, and we start trading stories, leadership stories. And in my particular part of the story, we were designing science labs. And part of the design of science labs in my previous school district involved having the architects come and talk to the students, having the students actually learn about ideation and blueprinting, having the students suggest elements. Now, I would have loved a water slide and aquarium. We didn't have the budget for that. However, the fact that we were able to hear that validated and affirmed the students who were actually some silly, some not. We did, though, have movable seating and flexible furniture that was more comfortable because the students were really suggesting that, almost demanding that. And we did leverage every single centimeter of the physical space for a concept of learning that was different because students influence the decision making. Yeah, we had professional architects over there. We had professional teachers. We had professional designers, administrators. That demonstration to me seemed normal and seemed typical. And then Nick had examples at his school, how his students were technology service interns and they got trained by the company they were buying their computers from. And PJ had students with really profound interest and skill in early web design, and they started doing work for the school. The three of us put our stories together, Stanley, and we realized the schools are built for students to learn. We educators are lucky and blessed to be able to serve in our communities or teach our kids. The kids are only here for a short time, right? Let's hear them. Let's listen to them, because guess what? We're old. And we are from a different age and a different time. And even John Dewey said this in 1915. He's credited with saying, if you limit the teaching to your time, and I'm messing up the quote, but you're robbing a generation of their future. And if we're going to address their future, we have them influence us so we can start to hear their thinking and allow us to.
I really love that, Mike. I mean, it's just such a great concept. My CFO and I were talking actually a couple of weeks ago, and he said something to me that was that I feel like I should have known or had kind of at the forefront of my mind. But he said, he's got a teenage daughter, and he said there's certain things that she knows that I don't know, and things that she understands that I don't understand them. And it's not necessarily a lack of knowledge. It's just a completely different lived experience and perception, and it's really hard to do what you were suggesting, which is to suggest that we know everything that this child knows and understands, and therefore we're going to tell you what's best. And if for a large part that may be true as we teach and parent, et cetera. But yeah, the student voice. I think we have a lot of students that are being left behind, and why is that? I mean, like the tagline for the book, invisible to invaluable.
Yeah.
I mean, that hurts to hear. That any student is invisible, and I keep hearing that over and over again. So a superintendent I interviewed, Latina, she said as she was during her schooling, she was invisible, and it hurts to hear that. And so I'm glad that the three of you were very focused on that, and I'm very focused on it now as well. When I think about computer science education, I know that this touches every area. I mean, we call it STEM or STEAM, and it's not. How are you approaching that in your schools? STEM, STEAM, core. We call science, engineering. Science, math, art are all core.
Yeah.
Right. Computer science isn't core, but 30 states, including yours, have made it mandatory to at least offer it. But why isn't it core? Are we going to make it core? Like, how do you teach this at your schools in the context of giving students some sort of voice in what they want to learn?
I'm so glad you asked. So Stanley, we're not teaching it as a core yet. And I'm going to add that word yet very sincerely. I will say I'm so proud in my current district, North Shore School District 112 in Highland Park and Highwood, Illinois. At the middle school level, we have 2 middle schools, grades 6-8, about 1,200 students. Every student gets a course that we call STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. They have between 5 and 9 weeks, depending on the course and the sequence. And they also have another course, a companion course that we call CMA, which is Communication Media Arts, where they're leveraging different technological tools and different abilities and different interests to create projects. So now at the middle school, that's one element is STEM and CMA. We also, for the first time since 1994, I'm really proud of our science teachers. They just, with our teaching and learning department, they just approved the first resource package with labs and books and materials that we've all agreed on ever. And it's really awesome because that's teacher agency and teacher voice, which is also extremely important in this profession, as we all know. Mm-hmm. So that material for 6-8 science starting in the fall already has career exploration built in, which is something that we've not really elevated or amplified systems wide. A lot of the careers are in the STEM or STEAM arena. In addition, there's an engineering component to a lot of the labs. So curricularly, it's inherent. In addition, next month, I'm so proud that the board is allowing me to take 2 administrators, district and building, an elementary principal and an assistant sup, and 3 teachers, 2 middle school science teachers and a middle school instructional coach, to an AASA, the Superintendent's Association with Jason Learning, is doing a STEM Academy designed to help us start to launch what do we do to elevate and amplify. So that's part of it. In the elementary world, we've got a partnership with our Education Foundation for Robotics, and we've got about 3,900 students pre-K-8. About, I want to say 400 were involved in a 3rd or 4th to 8th grade robotics fall to December after school club that was really intense, and then a massive engagement or convening in December. And this has been going on for several years. In addition,
why do you think it got such? I'm sorry to interject, but why do you think it got such great reception and demand and
OMG?
Successful.
Talk about a softball there, man. It's because it's what the students want. It's what they need. Yeah. It's what they crave. They get to work together in teams. They get to collaborate. They get to communicate. They get to express and demonstrate their creativity. They also have critical thinking with respect to problem solving. We have parent and teacher volunteers and paid, positions. Then they get to compete and actually demonstrate if what they've designed works, and they're using computer science. So 100%, that's why.
I get all of that. It sounds really good, and I can totally relate. I co-taught a class. Sure. One of our customers' schools in Manhattan around this time last year, and the teacher introduced me and said something about coding, and all the eyes glazed over, and they're like, "Oh man, we got to do coding again." And then she said robotics, and obviously I pulled this out, and everyone was like, "Yes, this is awesome! I love robotics!" And it was high engagement because it's project-based learning. So I get that. I still just want to dig into it though, because I'm frustrated because I feel like every kid should want that, and I think a big part of it is the hands-on and applying what you're learning to the real world. But still, it's not across the board right now, and somehow I'm wondering, are kids being told the wrong message somehow, or are some kids being told the wrong message that this isn't for me? I'm not robotics or computer science isn't for me for some reason, either a message from adults in their life or peers or whoever. Like, what's going on with that?
I have a belief, and this is based on 30 plus years in education, research, writing, professional development. Here's my belief. So, and I'll illustrate it with an anecdote. In our district, we issue a student engagement survey annually every October, November to all children in grades 3 through 8 in English and Spanish. There's a number of dimensions we measure, and we're looking at student engagement on a sort of the Maslow hierarchy of needs, but there's two dimensions that, in my estimation, are the most important. And they're the dimensions of choice and relevance. And it's not free choice undefined. There's 5 questions, Stanley. Every year we ask the same ones. I've got the teacher's guide. I can show everybody. 5 questions on choice and 5 on relevance. Now, I have choice in my classroom to demonstrate how I'm learning. And that is one of our lowest scoring elements from the voice and mouth of the children. And what I'm trying to do as a systems leader is help the leaders who support the teachers, who support the students, create conditions in the classrooms where opportunity exists in lives for children to have choice and demonstrate how they're learning. So if a child has an interest in Roblox, robotics, Legos, whatever, agnostic company, code.org, whatever it is, they will have the opportunity and the system set up and the structure set up in whatever, grades 3 through 8 in our world here, to demonstrate their learning through that. Until we open up our structures and systems as an organization and as a unit, the students are not being given that opportunity. And I'll submit very forcefully from my pulpit here, bully pulpit, that we're not listening to them. We're asking them, which is a great first step. We're hearing them, which is a second step, and they're telling us, which is a third step. Today, we have pockets of excellence and pockets of listening. We're working to get better. Relevancy is another one. So now the world is telling us computer science, computer coding, robotics, and the computer science world is relevant to us. The world is telling that to us because we're producing children for a workforce. We are the driver of this economy, period, globally, not just here in Illinois or in the US, but globally. That's public education. When the workforce says, hey, educator, can you hook me up here? Can you look at the McKinsey study for the jobs report? It's cool that you can memorize the 50 capitals. I know that Montpelier is in Vermont. I get it. I'm down with that. But I can also use a tool, and I'm not going to over-rely on tools. Can I use some critical thinking and problem solving that might be illustrated if I have a relevant robotics program as an example? So people in my role have to help create conditions for change, to sustain innovation, to say, yesterday's programming worked for me, but yesterday's programming is not going to work for the children before us today, and the workforce demands it.
Yeah, you make a really good point. And obviously, for most people, the purpose of an education is to get a job or a better job. And it's very easy to lose sight of that when we just focus on, well, this is core, that's core, and we have to teach this, and you go through your whole schedule, and we get sort of lost in the whole process of education and forget what the purpose of it is, which is the thing that should be driving the change. I mean, I wanted to ask you about computational thinking, because you're talking about problem solving.
Yes.
And I look at I think Illinois is still working on a state plan for computer science, but most of the state plans, they reference computational thinking quite a bit in terms of what they're trying to teach. And I think it's a really, really important concept to understand and to focus on, because it doesn't, we're not teaching coding. We're not teaching kids how to memorize things and to repeat tasks. AI does all that for us today. How do you think about computational thinking?
You know, I'm going to share what I think was a really elegant metaphor that I'm going to credit to somebody else, because it's not my own idea. I was on a webinar, I want to say a week or two ago, about generative AI in education. And the presenter, who was amazing, she said, generative AI in the education space, she wanted to lay her foundation so we students were understanding. She said it's a calculator for the humanities. And I really paused for a second because I'm like, I think she's got it. So, in education years ago, when the calculator came out, people feared that change or disruption or chaos, that disequilibrium in our space was going to rob children and future generations of the ability to compute and to function mathematically, just kind of carrying with me. The same way some people today fear that generative AI is going to rob the future of the ability to interact with the humanities or the liberal arts, which is really my background as a political science major and teacher. So I look at computational thinking as really a foundation where you pour on some core knowledge and core curriculum and cultural literacy, if I can. I know I'm dating myself going back to E.D. Hirsch from the 80s, but if you pour that in, you have to have a baseline of knowledge and understanding, desire. We try to activate schema as teachers, so there needs to be some schema there. The computational thinking is as present in an English language arts or Spanish language arts class, in a social sciences debate, in a science lab as it is in a mathematical classroom where children are actually taught computational theories. So I look at computational thinking as, we call it, when we're looking at human resources, we call it thought process. In what ways does an employee or does a candidate demonstrate competency or proficiency in solving a problem? Do they learn how to compute, i.e. ask questions? Do they learn how to process the data they've got, i.e. pros, cons, or SWOT, something like that? And then can they actually use critical thinking to solve a problem, whether it's a robot going down a path or you and me changing a curricular model that's been in place for 150 years?
So it's really interesting, right? Because when we think about computational thinking, it has the word computer in it, right? Computational and or computing. And I bought my kids, I want to say when they were kind of in the single digit ages, I bought them Minecraft coding because they all loved Minecraft. So I thought I'd buy Minecraft coding. And I think I bought it on Amazon or something like that. And it arrived and it was a board game. And wait, no, we're this is supposed to be coding. What's going on here? How do I connect this to my computer? And it was problem solving. It was all about problem solving. It was what do I have to do to move this piece from here to here?
Yes.
And how to, and what are the different ways that I can do that? And so I'd like to just, I'm like, we have some really big problems to solve, right? Us in the education field. And when I think about this, the whole idea of like, we just kind of laid the groundwork, right? We've laid the groundwork we've got all these jobs out there that are really super high paying. Computer science touches every core area. And we don't need to memorize anything anymore. We need to focus on critical thinking and problem solving and collaboration, management skills. Empathy is one that we didn't touch on, but I know your last book, the tagline is something like empathy, equity, adaptive, right?
Yeah.
And
yes.
And then student voice, right? Sorry, I don't have enough fingers of the different points that I'm making here. Student voice. So how do we get? How do you take this concept that we just talked about at a high level, computational thinking, that we're not going to talk about computational thinking to a 7-year-old. How do you take all of these concepts and get the student and their voice vested in learning these topics that we know are going to get them these really good paying jobs and help them to learn all of these skills that are in top demand by employers today? I'm sorry,
I'll tell you,
high level and hard question to answer, but I feel like we have to lay the groundwork for it because it's a really big challenge.
It's a great answer, and I'll share a response. And I say this humbly with pride, so I'm just going to lay that In the Unfinished Leader, a school leadership framework for growth and development, PJ, Nick, and I lay out a playbook and a framework in 6 lenses that leaders can demonstrate, illustrate, and we have a how-to section. And we start with empathy and equity. Maslow before Bloom is one of the names of our chapters. I know other leaders have books like that. The bottom line is genuinely learn how to understand those with whom you're serving and leading and for what purpose. Understand that equity is not a political term. Equity means helping provide conditions so that everybody can access whatever is going on. And then take that empathy and equity. Don't stop there. Now you've got a foundation in a relationship. You and I care about each other. We understand each other. You know what I need. I know what you need. You then go to adaptive leadership. It's no longer transactional or technical. That's great, and we need that. It's adaptive leadership. Make that change, right? And you do that through the development of yourself by getting yourself out of your comfort zone. But more importantly, you do that by developing others, right? The true leader has not followers, but other leaders. And then you communicate the you know what out of it. And then we have penned this, unfinished is really defined as don't let others in your organization keep the organization down. Don't let others keep you down. And don't be afraid of change. Why are we afraid of change, Stanley? Because change is fear. Change is loss. Our brains are wired to avoid change. Yet at the same time, in order for us to grow, we must adapt. As Darwin and others have said, those who will survive are not the most intelligent or the strongest, or those who adapt. So if you follow that framework, and if you don't want to do that, so then let's talk otherwise. Find any other leadership guru, any other consultant. Kouzes and Posner's, model the way, inspire shared vision, challenge the process, enable others to act, encourage the heart. Short answer, one answer to your question, effective leadership. That's 2 words, effective leadership.
Okay, let me put you on the spot then.
Okay.
I'm sure you're used to it. You're the superintendent. We talk about all these leadership concepts and lessons that we want all of our peers and subordinates to learn. You have a big challenge, right? You've got all of these different subject areas that you have to teach. Some of them involve standardized tests, some of them don't. There's not room for anything else. So what trade-offs are you making? What are you letting go of that a lot of people, some people love or don't want to let go of, or don't want to give up, or they just don't want the change?
So I love the question. And yes, I'm always on the hot seat as a superintendent. In the 6 consecutive years I've been blessed to be superintendent here right now in this position, and I've got a couple more going, right? A couple more in me. We have rebuilt together, and I say we, the 500 employees, we have rebuilt the organizational culture. The board and community are physically rebuilding the schools. Separate issue, but major issue. Yesterday, we launched the exploratory generative AI pilot with a new company that's out there that has guardrails around student data and privacy. We're joining this AASA Jason STEM Academy. I mean, literally, you caught me at a good time. A year ago, I would say, we're just building the blocks, man. Give me a break, right? Right now, I can tell you, I don't know what we're going to give up other than I'm trying to launch this innovative practice of this generative AI pilot with all of our teachers and staff to get rid of some of the clerical time that's sucking their energy away from, to give them greater opportunity to provide conditions in their classroom where they're able to focus more on instruction and less on administrivia. So if a generative AI tool can help them with better lesson planning and more efficient, they don't have to take their time. They can spend their prep time, planning time, and instruction time creating different conditions. And if we continue to harp on the student engagement survey, again, in my world, very, very finite answer to you, we can together generate better experiences for kids that are a little different. I can't answer your question today. What course am I going to give, or am I going to negotiate with our teachers to add another period of the day? Like, I can't do that yet. That's not in the works. What I'm aiming to do is continue to support wholeheartedly the robotics that we've got, the STEM and STEAM that's popping up in the elementary schools with organically from interested teachers and supportive principals and parents, really making sure that STEM and CMA at the middle school in my world are top quality, and then trying to get to the next level with this generative AI innovative practice to say, make more time and listen to the kids. So my answer is not as good as you want it yet, because we're not there yet, but I'm giving you a real answer in process, and I can't wait for year 7 here as superintendent.
It sounds like you've got a really good plan in place. I'd be curious to know a little bit more about the Gen AI platform. It's something that's helping your teachers be more productive. It's such a funny thing, right? Because we always hear about technology, like we're going to replace all of our teachers, or whatever it is. Like when I was a kid, it was the automotive industry, right? Robotics is going to replace all.
Right.
And every single time, whatever that industry is, it tends to grow because it releases us from the menial tasks or the low value tasks and frees our minds up to be better. So you said lesson planning and.
So we're partnering with Magic School AI. No, I'm happy to share. It's one of the newer folks out on the market. The genesis of the relationship is their compliance with and really commitment to data privacy,
right,
and how their whole model works there. We're also exploring, and there's a team of, I'm like pointing that you and your viewers can see. We've got a team of administrators and teachers that have been studying ChatGPT 3.5 and 4, Bing and Copilot, Gemini, Bard prior to it, Claude, Monica, a bunch of things I don't even know their names that give us cool stuff. Adobe Firefly.
I mean, we're friendly though.
we're company agnostic, right? And I joined ISTE and ASCD, have a pilot now, a beta for Stretch. We're diving in. I shared a video with the teachers to emphasize that no one's replacing me or them with generative AI. And it's not about technology. It's actually about computational thinking. I'm going to now steal your word. What it is, it's a new approach. So I showed an image. I had DALL-E 4, create an image for me. And it really took 6 or 7 times because it's not yet good enough at getting text onto an image. And I showed them an imperfect image, and then I showed them an accurate image. And it took me 8 times in a little argument with my prompt saying, no, you didn't spell it right. To really emphasize, this is simply a new suite of tools. Here's the deal. If you're spending 50% of your time, as the U.S. Department of Education studied and reported in their AI guidance document in 2023, that teachers are spending 50% of their time on average on non-teaching and non-instruction. Okay, that's unacceptable, because then how am I going to help them create the conditions that are going to allow for the growth and innovation and choice and relevance for the kids? So if this generative AI can cut that 50% down to 25%, I now have given them and the students the opportunity for 25% more, which actually exponentially grows in my pre-K through 8, 9 grades.
Mm-hmm. Well, I sure hope it works out that way, because I got to tell you, the plight of the teacher these past 10 years has been a really, really hard job. They had to, I want to say maybe 2013, Google Classroom, and then Chromebooks, and suddenly all this new technology was coming into school, and teachers have just had to relearn their job almost every single year. And then COVID came along, so needed to learn how to teach remotely. So it's been a challenge. Well, look, Mike, this has been a great conversation. I feel like we could go on for hours for sure. And I wanted to, I guess, give you everything you've said has been just so positive. So what I was going to say is I want to give you a chance to just kind of send a positive message to everyone, message of your choice. But okay. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you.
This has been a treat. I agree. I could talk to you all day. So thank you for the opportunity. I'm really grateful to you. So in the Unfinished Teacher, Becoming the Next Version of Yourself, the concept that we're sharing, and a concept I want to share, is a message of hope for every one of us. I don't care how successful any of us are, how many awards we've won, how many medals we've won, how many accolades we've got, how much money we've earned, any of the things that you may think make you successful, how many children you have, all that's great. In order for us to learn, grow, and have peace and harmony and respect and dignity and honor, which is really humanity, I think we have to understand that we've never arrived. We've never become the best version of ourselves. I firmly believe, as do Nick and PJ and others, that we simply iterate and reiterate. As Maya Angelou said, basically, you do the best you can until you know better than you do better. That concept is be the best you can and then change, because change is required if we're going to evolve as humanity. Public school, the great balance of the social machinery. I hope conditions are available in private schools, home schools, and micro schools. I'm not judging. We can do this together. We simply have to have the hope to learn, unlearn, and relearn so we can move forward together. Thank you for letting me say that.
Thank you so much, Mike. I really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise.
Thanks for listening. If you found this conversation valuable, please leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. We will see you next time on Decode.